The cream of the crop is celebrated at the Game Awards, but there's also always new announcements. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, new games that were announced at the 2019 Game Awards. Just a quick disclaimer for you, we aren't talking about Ghosts of Tsushima, New World, Amazon of all companies' surprisingly good looking MMORPG, or Gears Tactics, as these games were announced way before the show. Starting off at number 10, we got a couple of announcements of new League of Legends spin-off games that actually I'm interested in. League of Legends is kind of an iconic franchise, and it's hard to imagine doing other stuff with it. I mean, when you say League of Legends, we all have a very specific thought. But it looks like Ruined King and Convergence, both labeled a League of Legends story, are a couple of games that look interesting and that I would like to play. Ruined King is going to be a turn-based RPG, which is being developed by Airship Syndicate. Convergence, on the other hand, is an action platformer, which you'll be playing as Echo. Ruined King has kind of like a mystical vibe, and Convergence actually weirdly reminds me of Samurai Jack. I can tell you I'm easily there for both of those things and cannot wait to find out more. Coming in at number 9 is Prologue from PlayerUnknown Productions, and there is not a lot to say about this. It is a very pretty environment. I'm not going to say that it isn't. We're looking around at a forest during a storm, and that's literally what we're doing. We're looking around in a forest, and it looks left, looks right, lightning strikes, that's it. Now, what that means exactly, I don't know. We are talking about a game from PlayerUnknown Productions, though, who was previously known for making Battlegrounds, the game that popularized the Battle Royale genre. Now, we don't know how this connects to this new game, and Prologue is probably the vaguest possible name for it. That literally means the beginning of a story. Moving on to number 8, it's The Wolf Among Us 2, which is a season of a game that honestly nobody really thought was ever going to happen. Really awful stuff went down with Telltale Games. It was mismanaged horribly and tons of people lost their jobs, and series like The Wolf Among Us pretty much were thought of as dead. This is obviously a re-announcement. This was something that was going to be in production anyway. However, when there's not a company, there's no production. So anyway, what happened, a company called LCG Entertainment picked up Telltale's properties and is basically trying to revive them. That is a very simplified version of the story. They are trying to work with people who are from the previous company. The creative leads on the series are from the previous company. However, a lot of people did lose their jobs, and it still sucks a lot. That being said, this was a story I don't think we ever envisioned would continue, and it is very cool to see it continue. At number 7 is Fast and Furious Crossroads, which I have to say is being labeled a cinematic action racing vehicular heist game. Now, I just want to say that mainly implies car gameplay. I don't know how much other gameplay. There's a moment in the trailer where they're talking about jumping onto a moving train. I don't know if that's something that you will control or if it's something that's happening as part of the cinematic action. I don't know exactly. There's a lot that's unclear, but what is clear is that it actually does look interesting. I mean, there's some very big things in this trailer that are not realistic in any way. Some very video gamey stuff, but that's good because it's a video game. It looks like a game that is actually designed to be a game, which I know is a weird thing to say, but it's also 2019, where half of our games are just designed to waste our time to try to get us so frustrated we give it money. I don't know, it kind of reminds me of those mid-tier games of the PlayStation 2 era in a weird way, and most of my favorite games are those, so yeah, bring on Fast and Furious Crossroads. Moving on to number 6 is Weird West, which is a top-down gunslinging action game that revolves around dark fantasy placed in the Wild West. Now, let me just go ahead and say the trailer's incredibly intriguing. Is it the best looking game graphically speaking? Not necessarily, however, it really looks like a different take on the Wild West. And for me, that's very cool. I like the colors and perspective. We don't have enough top-down games. Now, we don't have enough single-player games, that are just games. I said that talking about Fast and Furious Crossroads, but I want to continue that here. In some respects, I almost don't care when something doesn't look photorealistic, or even doesn't necessarily have an amazing style to it, because I'm not particularly intrigued by the graphics of this game, but it's got a certain charm to it that I am very interested. and I like the idea of a Wild West dark fantasy game. I'm going to be following Weird West pretty closely because, honestly, I think it has a very large amount of potential. At number 5 is Sons of the Forest, the sequel to The Forest, the game in which you are doing everything you can to survive in a forest among a bunch of mutants. Now, we didn't actually get anything in too much depth, so I don't know exactly how this is a sequel. However, it starts with the protagonist on a helicopter. They look at their tattoo, which reads "Fight Demons," then it crashes, and it looks like all hell breaks loose pretty much. Now, it's most likely a survival game along the lines of the first. I think that's a pretty fair assumption to make. But our mutants are looking pretty cool this time around, I have to say. They have no eyes. And if it's directly connected to the first game, I'm gonna make the assumption that it happens quite a bit of time later. Obviously, if you save Timmy, he goes to the island to investigate, and what we have here is more of a military unit, or at least a PMC. That implies much more seriousness than the ending of the previous game. So I'm very interested in the Sons of the Forest. The soundtrack and the trailer is good as hell. Everything about it looks positive, and I'm looking forward. Coming in at number 4, it is Dark Alliance. Now, this is a Dungeons & Dragons game, as well as a spiritual successor to the PS2 era Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance games, which, if you're unfamiliar, were basically hack and slash RPGs. They were really good games, actually, and it's really cool to even see them remembered, let alone some sort of spiritual successor being made. Now, exactly how much of a spiritual successor it is, if it is a reboot, if it is in some way connected to the original games, I don't know. But the trailer is decidedly both old school and new school looking, and I have to say that's kind of cool they chose to do that. It is going to be both single player and multiplayer, not just an online co-op, but split screen local co-op. And that makes me very, very happy. I am tentatively very excited about this. Obviously, when they do stuff like this, you do have to kind of worry what modern monetization things might be in danger of having. But for now, I'm obviously optimistic. Given they are going with a decidedly old school look, it may be that we don't suffer through some terrible monetization stuff on account maybe the budget isn't that of a photorealistic game, and that would make me happy. We'll see. Coming in at number 3 is Bravely Default 2, which we should all be very excited about on account Bravely Default was just a fantastic old school RPG with some nice, interesting elements that it added. Now, they have gone with an upgraded look, as I would think that we very much would expect at this point. But we've got some very beautiful environments that look very hand-drawn and pretty. But we've also seen the 3D polygonal characters, and they're in an environment that is entirely 3D. So what exactly that means, we don't know yet. The original kind of had hybrid backgrounds, so we'll see. However, we do know that Bravely Default was a wonderful game, great story. Octopath Traveler was as well, and the same team was involved with that. I do not see any possible reason for this to end up bad. I'm hugely looking forward to Bravely Default 2. I've been waiting for it for years, and it's finally gonna happen. Moving on to number 2, we saw Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2, which I think we all kind of had an inkling might happen when Microsoft bought Ninja Theory. However, what we're seeing in the trailer for this game is more along the lines of a battle cry, a possible raising of an army against a huge foe, which is shown briefly at the end. And as far as graphics go, there's basically nothing that looks this good at the moment. It looks amazing, but I'm even perhaps more interested in exactly where they intend to go with Senua. The original Hellblade is perhaps as good as it is because it isn't super long. It's a brisk single-player game. It's incredibly detailed, incredibly well done. Every moment is deliberate, and clearly people thought very long and hard about everything in the game. So I'm interested to see if that holds up now that it's basically a big Microsoft studio. I mean, this trailer was basically the new Xbox launch game, hey, look what we can do trailer. So that's big. And finally, at number 1 is Godfall. Godfall is a looter slasher, which I'm going to go ahead and say is most likely the equivalent of a looter shooter, but hack and slash, which could be good, could be really horrifically bad. It is by Gearbox and Counterplay Games. It will be for the PlayStation 5 and on the PC exclusively on the Epic Games Store. I don't want to throw too much shade because it does actually look cool, and I'm big into hack and slash, probably more so than I would be into a looter shooter. And it will be offering 1, 2, or 3 player co-op, which honestly could turn out pretty good. But I also don't want to sugarcoat this. With all the other announcements that we saw, all of these rich-looking single-player games or narrative-driven co-op experiences, and then we see the first high-profile looter slasher, it's hard to get as excited as a lot of the other titles. I'll of course give it a shot because I love hack and slash, but the fact the rest of the list is not this kind of game, the vast majority of the announcements look like games, which you buy, play, and then eventually beat. It's hard for me to get that excited about this one, but we'll see. Couple of bonus games for you. First, Naraka Bladepoint. I'm gonna go ahead and say this has got me a lot more excited. It's kind of an arcadey looking Sekiro type deal. Obviously a slightly more rich and vibrant palette, but you can't be looking at that gameplay and not thinking Sekiro. Honestly, it's something I'm really stoked for. The footage you're looking at right now I think is amazing looking. Then moving on, we have Surgeon Simulator 2. The original game having a novel control scheme and also being really funny. I think a second one is definitely a welcome thing. And finally is 9 to 5, a tactical FPS, which has a trailer that's more or less just taking a big dump on Fortnite. We don't have a lot of information other than it is a 3 versus 3 head-to-head team-based shooter, but it makes a bold statement that I'm sure at least some people will approve of. There's a lot of really cool stuff that we ended up seeing. But enough from me. What do you think about these new games? Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Do not forget to enable all notifications. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.